last video, we learned how to use the cast and convert functions. Now, there's one more convert function we need to talk about. Just like you can convert data using the cast and convert functions, you can do so also by using the try and convert function. The try convert function works the same way the convert function does, with having the optional style parameter to specify the format to be used for date, time, real, and money values, except if the function can't convert the expression to the specified data type, it returns a null value instead of generating an error. So after we learn how to use the try and convert function, we are going to go more in depth on how to use functions by beginning to work with string data. Hey everyone, and welcome back to the SQL Server Series. This video is brought to you in reference to Joe Marach's SQL Server 2016 for developers. If you're interested in purchasing a copy of this book, then please follow the link in the description below. So let's take a look at our try and convert function. And the syntax for our try and convert function is going to be try underscore convert. And then we're going to open up two parentheses, and then in here the first one that we are going to have to access is our data type. We have to specify the data type, and then after the data type comes the expression, and then after the expression comes our optional style parameter. So I'm going to comment that out, and we're going to write a select statement that can handle this. Now I'm just going to select try convert, and then the data type that I want to specify is going to be variable character, and then I want the invoice date. This is going to be coming from my invoices table. This is going to be my expression, and then I'm going to name this as variable character date. Then this is going to come from the invoices table, like I just said, and I'm just going to write it early so that way we don't see any errors on the screen while we're specifying our columns here. The next try and convert I'm going to do is going to be variable character again. We're going to see variable character all the way down here for these, and I'm going to pass in the invoice date as my expression, and then I'm going to want to use one of the optional style parameters. I'm going to pass in a 1 for that, and I'm going to name that as variable character date 1, so we know that we use the 1 here for our style parameter. The next try and convert, this time the expression we're going to pass in is going to be the invoice date again, and my optional style parameter is going to be 107, and I'm going to name this as variable character date 107. Now if you guys don't know what these optional style parameters are doing, then you'll need to watch the previous video that we just watched, where we explained each one of these style parameters and we gave a list of the formats that they display. Now, the next try and convert is going to get the expression of my invoice total, and I'm not going to use an optional style parameter this time. I'm just going to name it as variable character total. And then for my next one, if I can type, I'm going to again grab my invoice total column, and then I'm going to pass in a 1 for my optional style parameter, and I'm going to name it as variable character total 1. And now for my very last one, this one's going to be the data type, and then instead of passing a column, I'm just going to hard code a date, and I'm going to use February 29th 2018, and I'm going to name this as an invalid date. And the purpose of this last column is so that way we can test out whether our try and convert function works, because the difference between try and convert is when you try and convert data and it is unable to convert it, then it will display a null value in the column in the result set. Convert, however, will just display an error and it will not run the query at all. So I'm going to run this query, and we see all of our columns here were successfully converted. If one had a optional style parameter, it followed that format. However, the invalid date was unable to convert, and it displayed no value. Now let's talk about how to use functions to work with string data. SQL Server provides a number of functions for working with string data. Most of these functions are used to perform string manipulation to alter how you want your data to be displayed in your result set. For the rest of this video, we're going to cover the most commonly used string functions that programmers use consistently throughout their day in the SQL programming field. You can use the len function to get the number of characters in a string. This function also counts spaces at the beginning of the string, but not spaces at the end of the string. However, with the next two functions, ltrim and rtrim, these will allow you to remove any leading spaces from a string. You can use the left and right functions to get the specified number of characters you pass in from the beginning and end of a string. You can use the substring function to get the specified number of characters from anywhere in a string. You can use the replace function to replace a substring within a string within another substring, and you can use the reverse function to reverse the order of the characters in a string. The character index function lets you locate the first occurrence of a substring within another string. The return value is a number that indicates the position of a substring. Now the pat index function is similar to the character index function, but there are some differences. Instead of locating a string, it locates a string pattern. So just like the string patterns you learned about in one of our previous videos where we used the like operator, the string patterns you use with the pat index function can also include wildcard characters. If you feel that you need a memory refresher on the like operator and wildcards, then please go back and watch video number 7 in our SQL Server series. Okay, so the concat function lets you concatenate two or more values into a single string. Although this function is similar to the concatenation operator, it lets you concatenate values other than just strings. And to do that, it will implicitly convert all values over to strings. This includes null values also, so any null values that get converted will be converted over to empty strings. Now last but not least, the last three functions should ultimately be self-explanatory. You can use the lower and upper functions to convert the characters in a string to lower or uppercase, and you can use the space function to return a string that has the specified number of spaces. So now let's take a look at some examples of string functions now that we just learned about them. So the first one I want to look at is the length function, len. So I'm just going to select len and then open up my parentheses. This is the syntax. And in here is where you can pass in a string. Now if it was a column, like the character name or something like that from the invoices table, then you can pass that in. But in this case, I'm going to choose the string that I want to pass in. I'm just going to pass in SQL Server. And remember now, since len returns the number of characters in a string and the leading spaces are included, if we were to add in some leading spaces, we would get a higher count than we would get without them. So I'm going to run this. Looks like right now we have 10. Now let's add some leading spaces in here. Let's put 2 spaces over here on the outside, and then 2 spaces up here up front, and then let's run this function again. Now you see it has changed to 12 from 10. So that's len. Now let's take a look at left. Now remember, left returns a specified number of characters, from the beginning of the string. And so I'm going to say SQL Server left, and then the specified number of characters from the beginning of the string. I'm going to request 3. So I'm going to get SQL, and then I'm going to get nothing afterwards if I run this. And now you see we got SQL. Now let's take a look at the next one. The next one is ltrim. Now remember that the ltrim function will return the string with any leading spaces that's in it removed. So I could say ltrim 12 SQL Server 12 and then close the string. So I've got 2 leading spaces here in front of SQL Server, and then I've got 2 trailing spaces. So let's see how it looks when we run it. Now you see the 2 leading spaces were taken out, but the trailing spaces remained. And so that's what the ltrim did. It took the leading spaces out. Now if we do right trim, just rtrim, and we do the same thing, we put 2 leading spaces, and then we say SQL Server, and then we do 2 trailing spaces, and then we run this. Now you see this time the trailing spaces are removed and the leading spaces remained. You can also nest the two functions together. You can do select L trim, and then inside the L trim you can do an R trim, and then in that R trim you're going to put two leading spaces. You can do SQL Server and then two trailing spaces, and then you can run this, and you see now both the leading and the trailing spaces were removed. So the next one is lower, and remember with using the lower one, it will return the string converted in lowercase letters. So we could say lower SQL Server, and then we could run it, and now SQL Server is in all lowercase. Then there's also upper. We could change that, and we could go upper and then run it, and now everything will be uppercase. And now just like the left, where we used left SQL Server 3, we can do right SQL Server and then specify how many spaces to the right we want it and run it, and now we just get VER because we're pulling from the right this time. Now let's look at substring. The substring is supposed to return a specified number of characters from the starting point of the string to the ending point. So I'll say select substring, and then the first thing I'm going to drop in there is my string, and in this case I want to try to use a telephone number, so I'm going to say 559, and then I'm going to put a space there, and I'm going to say 555-1212. That's going to be my string, and then my starting position is going to be 7, and then my ending position, which is going to be the length of how many characters in the string that I want, is going to be 8. So what this is going to do is this is going to start off at number 7, which if you count 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 starts at 5, and then we're going to get 8 characters starting at 5 here. So we're going to get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and 8. And so when we run this, we should only get 555-1212 back using substring. We run it, and that's exactly what we get, 555-1212. Now let's write a select statement that uses some of these here. I'm going to write one that uses the left, right, and the substring function. So the first thing we're going to do is I'm going to select all from vendors. Remember, this is on our AP database. And then from vendors, I'm going to want to get my vendor name. And then I want my vendor contact last name. And then we're going to use concatenation, which we covered in a previous video. If you don't remember what concatenation was, go back to one of our very earlier videos. I think it was maybe the 4th or 5th video. And then we're going to concatenate a comma here. I'm going to use the plus signs. And then I'm going to get left. I'm going to use my left function here. And I'm going to pass in my vendor contact first name. And then I only want the first character from that. And then I'm going to use another concatenation, and I'm going to use the period sign here. I'm just going to put a period in here. I'm going to concatenate that, and I'm going to name this as my contact name. And then after that, I'm going to use the right function, and I'm going to pass in my vendor phone number, and then I'm going to use 8 as my integer expression, and I'm going to name this as phone. This is going to all come from vendors, and then we're just going to say where substring vendor phone, which is the expression we're passing in, and then I want to start at position 2, and then I want to get the length. I want to get the length of 3 after that position, and I want that to be equal to 559. And then we're going to order by vendor name. And looks like I have an error here. I do not need this here. And we're going to run this query, and we see we have our vendor name, our vendor contact last name, concatenated with a comma with using the left function our vendor contact first name, so it just gave us the first character in our vendor contact first name. And then our phone number here, what we did was we said give me the right vendor phone, 8 spaces to the right. So we got 8 spaces to the right, and then we substringed that, and then we counted 2 spaces over, and then we got 3, and then we set that equal to 559. And so it got all of the phone numbers that have an area code of 559, and then it gave us 8 characters to the right of them. So that is all for this video. If you're interested in our next video, head on over to database-tutorials.com. Hit the like button on this video if you enjoyed it. If you didn't enjoy it, hit the unlike button. If you want to receive automatic notifications when our next video is posted, simply hit the subscribe button. So thank you for watching, and see you next time.